A wealthy doctor named Arthur Duperrault chartered a luxury yacht called the Bluebell to take he and his family from Fort Lauderdale, Florida to the Bahamas. Arthur also brought along Julian Harvey, who was a close friend of his that he had hired to be the captain of the ship. And Julian was going to bring along his wife, who was named Mary Dean. And so on November 8th, 1961, the Duperraults and the Harveys set sail on the Bluebell, and by all accounts, their trip was going extremely well. But on the fifth night of the cruise, 11-year-old Terry Jo was down in the sleeping quarters of the Bluebell when she woke up to the sound of stamping sounds and screaming coming from above. And immediately she sees that her family is lying on the ground. They're all deceased. Julian Harvey comes running up to her and tells her to go back down into the sleeping quarters. And so, not knowing any better, she just turns around and runs back down to her bunk. But as she's sitting there, she sees that water is flooding into the Bluebell. She can't stay down here or she's going to drown. So Terry Jo goes back up the steps, she goes onto the main deck, and she sees Julian Harvey, who's standing over the edge of the boat. And she yells to him and says, "Are we sinking?" And he looks at her and he just says, "Yes." And then he promptly jumps over the railing and swims to the lifeboat that had detached from the Bluebell and was drifting away. He climbs onto it and takes off, abandoning her on the sinking ship. Unbeknownst to Terry Jo was the reason the Bluebell was sinking in the first place was because of Julian Harvey. When he was hired to be the captain of the ship, he used this as an opportunity to bring his new wife out with him and then kill her and collect on her insurance policy. But it's speculated that while he was attacking her, one of the Duperraults had seen him doing it, and so in order to cover his tracks, he had turned on the Duperrault family. So 11-year-old Terry Jo, as she's standing on this sinking ship, she snaps into action. She remembers seeing a cork float that was pinned up against one of the walls of the ship, and she runs over and she undoes it, she puts it on the water, she climbs on top of it just as the Bluebell sinks under the surface of the water and disappears. So she's half on this cork float, half of her body is in the water. And so what began happening is parrotfish began swimming up and biting her toes, her feet, and her legs. After 2 days of balancing precariously on this cork float, the parrotfish disappeared and a bunch of dolphins surrounded her. On November 16th, 1961, 84 hours after the Bluebell had sunk, a Greek freighter actually spotted Terry Jo. And initially, when they went down to try to get her, there was so many sharks swimming around her that they had to be very careful that they didn't accidentally knock her into the water where she might be eaten by sharks. But eventually they were able to get Terry Jo into their basket and pulled her up onto the ship, and she would make a full recovery. As for Julian Harvey, he had made it back to shore, and as luck would have it, he was literally in a police station giving information about what happened when the police were informed that Terry Jo had survived. Julian quickly excused himself and fled to a Miami hotel, and the next day he was found dead in his hotel. This is the picture of Terry Jo that was taken by one of the Greek sailors right when they pulled up alongside her before they pulled her onto their ship. This image would soon appear in publications all over the world. In 2015, Jolie had just graduated high school and was planning to move away from her town and go to college outside of Alabama. But she had a bit of a problem because she had this boyfriend named Lauren Brunner who she had repeatedly tried to end the relationship with because he was so possessive, but she hadn't been able to successfully break up with him yet. Every time she tried to, he would threaten that he was going to hurt himself or that he was going to hurt her if she ever left him, and so she never quite followed through. But with college on the horizon and to her what felt like this fresh start once she left Alabama, she finally pulled the plug on her relationship with Lauren and made it very clear that they are done. For weeks, Lauren was trying to convince Jolie to change her mind, but again, Jolie just stayed firm on her decision. On August 29th, 2015, Lauren would break that silence and would reach out to Jolie and ask her if she wanted to go for a hike with him, simply as friends. After Jolie responded to Lauren that she was willing to go, Lauren was really excited. And so he posted on Instagram this picture of himself looking, I guess, excited. It's hard to tell from the image, but the caption basically said that he was excited about going on this hike with her and that things were, quote, looking up. At the same time, after Jolie had given that answer to Lauren, after she had agreed, yes, I'll go hiking with you, she texted her friend jokingly, "If something happens to me, you'll know who I was with." The next day, on August 30th, Lauren picks up Jolie and he begins documenting their trip on his Instagram page. Jolie gets in the car and he takes a picture of her and he captions it, "On our way to go hiking." The second image that he uploads is of Jolie walking her dog Kiba in a parking lot. It appears that this lot is at the base of the hike they're about to go on. The third image shows Jolie standing on a rock overlooking this forest, and she's holding her dog Kiba. And it's clear, based on this picture, that now they've actually begun the ascent up this trail. The fourth and final picture that was uploaded to his Instagram page shows Jolie standing on a rocky cliff, and she's holding her own camera up and she's taking pictures out over this valley. Immediately after this picture was taken, Lauren would shoot Jolie twice and push her off of that cliff. He was sentenced to 52 years in jail and bragged to the inmates he was with that if he couldn't have her, no one could. 22-year-old Sailor Gilliams and her good friend Brendan Vega, who was also 22, decided they wanted to go hiking. They were looking for novice trails, things that they would be able to manage, and they thought they had found one in Santa Barbara, California. And so they headed off in that direction and they took off on this particular trail. A little ways into their hike, and they started to feel like, man, the terrain here is pretty treacherous. It just seems totally like an advanced trail. They start to wonder, did we veer off the trail? Worried they might be lost, they turned around and began backtracking. Not only do they not find the trail, but they don't find any trail. They've managed to go completely off the path and are now in this kind of random boulder field that they have no idea where it is on the map. Navigating this terrain in the daytime with light would have been difficult even for an experienced hiker. But now it's nighttime, they don't have flashlights, and they're jumping boulder to boulder, and Sailor at some point loses her footing and falls and fractures her leg. Brendan rushes over and tries to help Sailor stand up, but she can't move. And so Brendan tries to put her on his shoulders and starts walking with her. And that works for a little while until they're passing by this waterfall and they fall off of it and they come careening down, they smash onto the ground, they survive the fall, but Brendan now has a broken elbow and Sailor now has a broken ankle on top of her broken leg. And so the decision was made that Brendan was going to go try to find help on his own and that she would stay here and continue to yell for help in hopes that someone might hear her before Brendan got back. So at the same time that Sailor and Brendan are going through this horrible ordeal, three totally unconnected people decide they want to blow off work and school and just go escape into nature. And so they settle on a hike that would bring them to a waterfall in Santa Barbara, California. And at some point, one of the hikers starts taking pictures as they're kind of going across these boulders. Through the viewfinder, as they're taking pictures, they notice something out of the corner of their eye that's in frame. It was like this red flash of something. And so the hiker puts their camera down and she looks down where she sees this red, and she can tell right away that it's someone's hair. It's a girl's dyed red hair. And it was Sailor. The hikers went down to Sailor and they called 911 and they came in, they airlifted her out of there, and Sailor would actually make a full recovery. Unfortunately, Sailor's friend Brendan did not make it. They found his body about 100 meters away from where she had been laying. After the ordeal, the woman who was taking those pictures, she went to her camera and was flicking through some of the pictures she had taken during the hike. She had inadvertently taken a picture of Sailor before they had found her. So had it not been for these hikers being where they were and taking those pictures and noticing her red hair, this picture almost certainly would have become the last picture of Sailor Gilliams alive.